Thanks for the feedback on my question. And Alan Noreen, thanks for clarifying that. And I thought the email from Peggy was very helpful. Actually, I stole pretty much everything she wrote down and put it into a spreadsheet. I loaded it up to the shared drive and I labeled it allocation methodology. I thought we could use that to guide the conversation. So I am not a Zoom expert.
Lauren's a big help.
Looks like it doesn't want to allow me to desktop too. That's it. No, hold on. My system says it's not allowed. I have to allow it. All right. I have to figure that out later. Oh, wait, here we go.
Are you trying to share it, Bob?
Yeah, but it's not going well. I have a privacy filter. It's not allowing me to do it. I'll have to look into that later. Sorry.
Well, you want to ask Lauren to share it, or can Lauren share it for you?
Lauren, can you share it for me? It's on the shared drive.
Yeah, I'm just trying to get it open. Give me one sec.
Yeah, you're in there now. That's it. So I know at the last meeting, everyone was gonna look at the current list or what was left on the list of proposals. I went through and there are some items there I think we should consider, but I think there's about just over 2 million in requests and the majority of that is taken up by one request for the generator. So I guess the first thing to do is decide if we're going to fund, if the funding of that generator is something we should consider, that's going to pretty much eat up the entire budget. So there wouldn't be much left to do the other grants and support. So I'm curious what everyone thinks about that. I don't have any information on it. I just saw a generator to emergency response shelter. I don't know where that shelter is.
I'm gonna open up both of those reports side by side. If you give me just 1 second, that way we all know exactly what you're talking about too with the generator.
I can't find my printout.
Okay, can you see both of those things side by side now?
Yep. Okay, the movie's a big screen. All right. There it is. So it's yeah, it was emergency center. I don't know if it was. There it is. Yeah.
It makes reference that it's already in the CIP.
Right. So it was in the CIP, but I don't think it was approved under the CIP. The big one under the CIP was the geothermal system for the town campus.
So the 1.3 is just half of it, 50% of it is the grant. Is that what I'm seeing?
Yeah,
And this would be at Paulson?
yes.
Yes.
Well, Bob, I'll take a stab at trying to answer your question to us. I guess we all want to do what's best for the town, and to my way of thinking, spreading this money around is of greater benefit to the community than just having perhaps one large project like this. So
Mhm.
I guess I can be persuaded otherwise, but my first reaction is I would hate to see almost all the funds just go into one project, and a project which frankly doesn't have much public visibility.
Yeah. Yeah,
It's
I
a
was
very
kind of
valuable
the
project.
same way.
Yeah, I'm not speaking against it. I'm just not sure I would pick to fund it this way.
Right.
I
I'd be
would agree
interested
with
in-
that, you know. One of the things that was mentioned, and Peggy mentioned it in her chat last week, is, you know, this should be something that's transformational and something that the public really sees a benefit of. And I mean, generators definitely needed, but I think it's the wrong place to be taking the funding from.
May I just say too, when the selectmen, before I was on, the selectmen really allocated half of the federal grant. Obviously, if this was a priority, it would have been on that list. I'm surprised since they've now moved the emergency center to Polson. There must be some sort of generator there. I can't imagine we're moving the whole town over to another building without any type of backup generation. Does anybody know if there's any kind of generator there? And why Polson was picked?
Yeah, I don't believe there is, Noreen, and I don't believe we have officially moved it yet. I think this is in the planning stages.
Okay, I thought.
As you know, the town gym is in a floodplain, and it's not the
I
best
did- I
place
didn't-
for an
I didn't know
emergency
that.
shelter.
Yeah.
I didn't know that.
I didn't know that. That's a bad place to put the emergency shelter.
We all agree on that, yeah.
But Bob, I would agree with Al. I think, you know,
Yeah.
there's a real spectrum. The town really took a big bite of the apple with the first 2 million. I think they gave us a broad spectrum really of ideas for things that we could be touching. EDC for certain instance. Certainly the arts came up, but there were a lot of really good ideas out there and things that could maybe be transformational. I'm glad to see EDC here because that's something I think we haven't done enough with, especially with maybe with helping our businesses, not like, you know, giving a grant for 5,000 to one business, but doing something that would help all businesses or most businesses. And I don't have the answer what that is, but we should find out.
Yeah.
I think
No, I
that's
agree.
that's what I was thinking.
Yeah, I thought it was it would be not as impactful maybe as we could hope to achieve if we look at things differently. And before I forget, I know that the big chunk that came out before was on that geothermal unit. I'm not sure if you all are aware, but Meg's Point, that Hammond asset, has a geothermal heating cooling system. So it might be worthwhile. Actually, I got a tour of it a couple months ago. It's very interesting, but it might be worth sending someone there if they need to learn anything. I think they're happy with it, but it was put in a couple of years
Is
ago.
this the nature center you're talking about?
Yes, yes.
Oh, I didn't know that.
Yeah, you can go there and find if the Russ is there, Ranger Russ. He's very happy to give tours of it. So it's a nice system. So anyway, I just wanted
But
to make sure
again,
you
that
all
would
were aware of
take up well over $1 million.
Yeah, that's in the CIP.
Okay,
That's why I was asking for clarification. We're going to treat that as approved.
so all those things that are on the CIP, they're all they're not in our purview, correct?
Correct. Most of those have been approved. I think most, if not all of them.
Well, they've been approved in CIP, but they haven't been approved for funding. So as long as you guys don't want to change anything here, we can, you know, let the Board of Selectmen know that you are recommending all of those go forward in ARP funding.
Well, I can't say that I recommend them going forward. That's why I was asked that question, if we can look at these individually and make an assessment, or if we should just take them as already allocated to the fund by the I guess the CIP committee, and just awaiting approval. Because if we want, I'm happy to go through each one of these and assess what we think, but I have no information pretty much on any of them. Sounds like the
So
committee.
the project, so just to speak to the CIP projects, all the projects that are moved forward in the CIP committee itself is a subcommittee of the Board of Finance. And the Board of Finance is now in their deliberations, and there's still a public hearing to come for the final budget. There is a chance to change if this committee, I believe, if you feel very strongly against any of these projects. Yes, this has been approved by the committee, supported by the BOS, but you do have the opportunity, if you feel strongly that you don't believe ARP funds should be used for these projects, to state that. And so in the CIP document, which is online, like each project does have like a backup page. We have a form stating need, any sort of fund, quotes that we've received, any detail that we have at this point is in that document, if that helps at all.
May I just point something out too? I know when you look at the list of the CIP projects that were recommended, it's pretty heavy with beach and rec, with all the parks, the playground. Sorry about that. The playgrounds and everything. But I think the thought there was during COVID, that's where people were looking for. They were looking for outside sites to be with their families. So I think that was the focus of that whole, all the different playgrounds, fixing the bathrooms. That's where it was coming from.
Yeah, I get that. And when I was looking through it, I understand the idea to create the outdoor spaces. That was an easy one. And the playgrounds and the like, I think some of them, I don't have any idea how the estimates were created. I mean, if I had to ask a question, I don't quite understand because I was not involved, the connection of the geothermal with improving the air quality management within the town campuses. There's probably a lot cheaper ways if that was the main goal to improve air quality. It's a very expensive filter. But so that's what I'm saying is this committee has not had any input or any chance to review it. So if that's a request of us, then I'm happy. I mean, I'm sure we're all happy to get into the details.
I can speak a little bit, Bob, to the ambulance building. I'm on the board of the Madison ambulance, and we have had at least 3 years and possibly 4 years. We've had an OSHA complaint and citation against us for ventilation issues in the building, and we've been waiting very patiently for it to be fixed. Quite honestly, I think that funding should come from another source. But I mean, it's got to be fixed. But I think that this is perhaps I would not recommend taking the money out of the ARPA funds for that.
Bob, I guess I'm going to respond again to the question you put in your email to us.
Thanks. I thought I got an answer. Now I'm not sure.
Well, I guess I'm going to perhaps try to reinforce it. I feel that because of the elaborateness and extent of the CIP planning process, I almost consider these projects to be a settled matter. And I would think that we can best serve this community by looking at the roughly $2 million we have and not go over settled projects, but focus rather on the other ways that this money might be applied. And I think Peggy's email to all of us today, suggests community assistance might be a good thing for us to think through. I worry that if we go back and start fiddling with the CIP schedule, that we are then going to have to reactivate the boards of finance and board of selectmen and start all those discussions again at a point in time when really the board of finance is about to finalize this and take it back to the public. So I'm just one person here, but I think our time and energy can best be spent as a committee thinking about the other things that are not on the CIP list and the other ways we might, in line with our charge, benefit this town. I'm hesitant to fiddle with the CIP schedule.
Yeah, and that was the intent of my question to everyone before. And
That's a great point, Al.
and if that's fine, but then I just want to make sure that the committee is not being seen as approving or disapproving anything. We had no participation in that. So the initial funds that were spent were outside the purview of the committee. We've got the 1.9 something million to spend, and that's what we'll focus on. So that's when.
Well, that's my
sounds like
two
a plan.
cents. Yeah.
Yeah, that's
I'd
fine.
be
with me.
interested to
That's
hear
good.
from Noreen. She may or may not agree with me.
I actually agree with you, Al. And, really, we've got a time problem. We don't have a time problem. They do. And we've got to get this to be voted on. And the budget, along with the CIP recommendations in May to the voters. So I think it's frustrating to know we were at almost 5 million and we're down to 1.9, but we've got some great potential projects and hopefully some new ones will come up. And it'll be exciting to see what we can do with the 1.9. I think that's what we should focus on.
Any other thoughts? So I guess then we'll say the committee is focused on the remaining funds. That's within our remit to identify how we can best spend those in line with the direction that Peggy and the Board of Selectmen have given. And so based on that, if we continue with that premise, that's what I tried to do. I grabbed, I thought Peggy's email was a good way of illustrating some of the ideas and some of the work that needs to get done. And all I did was basically grabbed her email and parsed it out into different categories in this spreadsheet. Like I said, which you'll have access to. There's a lot of requests on that spreadsheet, but I think it might make sense for us to determine the process by which funds are granted. And then we can go back to anyone who's requested and ask them to go through the process so we have a consistent application of the rule set and methodology for approving the funds. This way, there's no questions as to why one group got it and another didn't. If we can make it very clean and clear, the way to get the funds will be apparent. Make sense, everyone?
Well,
And I just
it
don't
does
take
me,
anything I
Bob.
wrote as gospel. I just did this so we had something to talk about at the meeting.
I don't ever recall the town being in this position before. And so, Noreen, your memory goes back even further than mine, but I think we do need to set up an orderly process which allows due consideration for applications from all kinds of agencies and organizations.
I agree. Believe me, been a selectman many years ago. We've never been in this position. So believe me, we know a little more than you do, not much more. But I'll tell you, I think looking at it quickly, the town definitely did some great stuff with what they're proposing to use the money for, and that's great.
Oh, yeah.
But I think we need to look at outside groups now, other groups that, for instance, there's so little for the business community. We've got to do more for them. And I think that was always an intention of this grant from the beginning in Washington. So, in not-for-profits, where are they? How can we help them? Other than the arts community, there's not a lot of support. There was a little money given to a couple groups, but nothing significant. And I think we need to just take another look.
I agree. I think what Peggy delineated where, well, first the economic development component, I think that'll be great. I've worked with Sherry before on the Shoreline Chamber of Commerce when she was the president of that group. So she's great, and she'll be, I think, very focused on how to use whatever funds we can get in the most appropriate way. I think it also might make it interesting to see if there are any kind of initiatives that might cross the lines between Madison and Guilford, since she works on both sides. If she can come up with some things, some ways there to kind of get a bigger impact even. It's one thing to look at. But
She's
so
she's on this thread, Bob, you know.
oh, she is? Oh, okay,
yeah.
on the email thread? Oh, perfect. Okay.
I believe she
And I
was.
should say-
Sherry, you're on, right?
I am here, yes.
Oh, good.
I don't
Oh,
know.
hi, Sherry. I didn't know
Hi,
you
I
were
don't-
on.
I was incognito because I was in the car, but I'm home now,
Okay.
so I'm here if you have any questions.
All right, hi.
Well, he's saying nice
Hi.
things about you, Sherry.
Good
so
thing
that's
I
good.
did, jeez.
Yeah, thanks, Bob.
All right. So yes, I think the three areas identified so far are arts, community assistance or nonprofit. I just think of a community assistance, and then economic development. Is there any other category that we should, does that capture everything? I couldn't think of anything.
We have our public safety with both of our firehouses did get a little something around 3.
Should we add that in?
But yeah, but I mean, I think if you're talking not-for-profits, I don't know if you're including public safety, but I think, you know, there is public safety with our ambulances and with our fire that is not part of the town.
Yeah. Okay, I put that in there. That's a good one.
You know, one thing with the EDC, and Sherry might be able to answer this, when I talk about helping businesses, should we be getting some advice from Sherry's counterpart on the chamber, Michelle, or at least some of the business people about what are they hearing from businesses? You know, what would be a big help to them? You know, we've gotten down the road here a little bit. No, it's not most of them, but some of them, hopefully a lot of them have reopened. But what would help still at this point? Right away.
I think
I
John
know, Noreen,
John is
there's
on their
one-
board.
Oh,
Yeah,
John,
there's one
John,
small-
that representative.
Yeah, there's one small project that I know they're going to be approaching for, and that's to do something to the kiosk downtown to sort of electronify that thing. But that's just a small project. But I think that certainly it's worth. I brought up about this funding being available at the last board of directors meeting, and I haven't heard anything from anyone specifically, but you know, at least the idea is out there, and I'm sure Michelle might be hearing something from individual owners.
One of the things I always think of is job training or job, even getting the word out, job, you know, looking for people and all, because that's what the first thing people say to you when they own a business. They can't find employees. So, I mean, I don't have the answer to what it should be, but maybe chamber members would. Sort of a, you know, a job, maybe a job fair or something. I don't know if we could do training because it's so, you know, each business is different, but
Yeah.
anyway, when you talk to employers, within 2 minutes, they're talking about problems getting staff.
Yeah, no, that's true. We have challenges ourselves where I work.
Bob, it may be that we can't identify all of the
Yeah.
categories today, but that we can begin to set up a process, an application and evaluation process. And after these applications come in, we may be then forced to ask ourselves, are there additional categories we should be considering? The applications, when they come in, may not fit neatly into any of these categories. I guess I would like to see us cast the widest possible search for how we can help the community.
That's good point. That gets to my next another question I had is the funding allocation, is it one big pool? Or do we think it's better to divvy it up amongst different categories? When we talked about having a public hearing, I thought that's where we could start to get some input as to where the priorities might be or where people would like to see the money spent. Just general categories, not specific projects. That'll take us down a rabbit hole real quick. But if we can keep it high level and say we've identified these 3 or 4, where else would we need to spend money that could have an impact on the town?
I like the idea of a public hearing, especially if we publicize it well.
Yeah, and if we do it electronic, you might get people to show up.
Mhm. Especially if we get the chamber to work with EDC to really support it.
We did a on the other committee I was on, we did a survey. It was actually fairly well responded. It was a small number relative to the number of people in the town, but it got a couple hundred responses out of the 18,000 people. A lot of them are kids. We could try that as well, but I think just asking people the general idea of where would you want the money spent, and give them some ideas as to what to track and where to vote, that'd be helpful. So on the idea of the funding allocation, do you all think it should, and maybe this is something we can't answer, but it's a question that needs to be addressed. Is it best to just have one big bucket? Or do we want to split it up so you really do hit each of the different categories to some extent? I mean, the idea of Peggy asking the first kickoff to do something transformational, I'm not sure you can pull off transformational with the remaining funds unless you pour it all into one project. I think maybe what we could do is get just a really broad sense of improvement within the town. And
Bob,
Sure.
I agree with your point, and yet I look at some of our smaller agencies in town, and it's possible that $20,000 could be transformational in terms
Okay.
of developing a program or a service. I think I'm finding this a challenge because the decision-making regarding who gets the funding, to me, sort of drives this whole process. In other words, who decides and what's the easiest way to administer it? I'm not sure I have any brilliant answers to any of that. I imagine we could learn from some other communities, but who is going to evaluate these and rank order them and decide who gets the funds and who doesn't, and then who's the final approval authority for all of this? To me, that's a process, as far as I know, this town government has never been involved in. And I think this committee is going to have to blaze a new trail here and help the town figure out how to best do this.
yeah, I mean, it shouldn't be that hard. It's not really much different than running through a budget. You got so much funds to allocate, and where do you want to put it? But when you talk about that, that's when I started thinking about the idea of splitting up the remaining funds into specific buckets for specific types of requests. Say we want to fund the development of the arts in the town with $200,000 and public safety with $300,000. If we do that, it then allows us to come up with a review process specific to that grant, because it may be hard to put arts ahead of a public safety initiative. And you may end up spending it all in one spot, which may be good, but may miss what you just said. $20,000 grant will allow us to create this, and it will change the way the town lives. You know, maybe the kiosk idea is a small idea, but maybe that becomes a center of communication for, you want to find out there's a town hall meeting, go up there and it's it's up in lights. That could change things.
Yeah, I guess historically, elected officials have gotten involved with budgeting, but it's the budgeting we do is for services which the public believes are appropriate for the town to be delivering or overseeing, like the library. When it comes to, let's say, the Madison Arts Council applies to us for help in funding the July 4th concert, that's sort of outside the traditional jurisdiction of town government, at least in
Yeah.
this town. And as a selectman, I'm not sure that I have the knowledge or the comfort level to suddenly deal with 30 non-government entities that all want to propose to do good things for the townspeople. I'm not sure elected officials are really in a position to make those judgments. So I'm looking for a process which involves some folks who are good at evaluating those kinds of things. The final recommendation may go to elected officials, but I'm not sure elected officials can wade into what could be dozens of applications.
Oh, I did the math. Depending if you want to give 20,000 a grand, it's going to be 200 approvals to use up to 2 million. There's a lot. The volume is big. When it was a 5,000, it was 400, I guess, or 800. There's a lot. So the volume is going to be significant. And that, again, I got to maybe the best way to do it is divide and conquer. So what got me thinking is, in part of the email was the idea that some of this has already been worked out by one of the towns. And I started thinking, well, if you want to understand what a good arts program looks like, we need to talk to people that lead different arts programs and say, how would you score? What's your idea for scoring criteria? I know it sounds strange, but it's not much different when you're trying to sell something to out in the world, and you have a lot of candidates. You go through a list of which account has the best need for my product. And if it doesn't stack up, you just don't bother them, because you're really just bothering them. But if you can come up with a scoring system that allows you to assess based on experts that, hey, public safety is important. If it hits these things, this is the criteria you have to get above to really be considered. So number of people impacts, how long it might last. We come up with that. But if you can then customize that for each, I think you can get a fairly small group to review and approve. But then I agree. I think it should all go to the Board of Selectmen for final check. Yes, we approve it. Because you're going to have some checks and balances there as well.
I like the kinds of criteria and questions you've listed. I wonder if Sherry has any insight as to how other towns, what we might learn from other towns in terms of setting up the process and applying those criteria.
I do, and in Peggy's email, can you hear me okay?
Yeah.
Yes.
In Peggy's email today, she had mentioned a grant program through East Windsor. And I'm willing to come to your meeting next Thursday and maybe do a little presentation on what East Windsor has done, and for your consideration. We're also doing in Guilford a facade improvements grant for businesses to do some, external improvements to their businesses with some of our ARP funds in Guilford. Very small dollars, but it's, the towns have done different things across the state and across the country, but the one that Peggy mentioned specifically was East Windsor, and I'm happy to, provide more information to you, even if it was just via an email to your group, that or speak at your next meeting, whatever works for you.
I think if you can come speak at the next meeting, that would be great. So we can ask questions and it'll get us thinking along those lines.
Happy to.
Okay. So right now, at a public hearing, we would request candidates for additional areas of funding in general areas. out in addition to the arts, community, economic, public safety. We have a general catch-all category.
Not for profit. Bob, can I just ask a question? And with this criteria, should part of the criteria be impact of COVID? You know, if a not-for-profit or a group comes who really just never got going, they weren't, you know,
Yeah.
really weren't, so they weren't impacted by COVID because they really haven't gotten going versus a group, and I'm thinking of the group that does the concert on the green.
Right.
They certainly lost any capability of raising money if they couldn't, you know, bring people together. But so should that be a criteria? I don't know how that would work with the facades, which is an interesting concept.
Yeah.
But it's, I know when this all started, that was part of it, the impact of COVID.
Yeah. I don't know. I've bounced that around myself. It seems like it should be that the funds have to be spent over the next, I think, 3 years. I don't know when COVID's going to go away. It doesn't seem to be gone yet. And maybe that's the first round. Maybe the initial request is demonstrate need based on some impact from COVID. That, and because I didn't actually understand the idea of providing fundings to those nonprofits like the Concert on the Green until it was explained, it's because they couldn't raise funds. And so they're basically out of luck. So that's, I think that's a great way to continue the type of culture that Madison has developed by bridging that gap until they can get back to raising the funds where they typically can. It's not a bad, you know, using that as a possible initial criteria until we get the first tranche of requests. And then if COVID's gone in a year and it's really not impacting, maybe you open it up to more if there's still funds available.
That could be a starting point.
Yeah. And it is very much in the spirit of the grant that was given to us.
That's what I was thinking.
Bob, I'm thinking as we're moving forward that it might be helpful for us to distinguish between public information sessions and public hearings. I think as we begin to propose a process for laying this out for the community, we might want to have several public information sessions.
Yeah.
Right.
And that has slightly different characteristics than a public hearing.
Okay, I didn't realize that.
Formal.
I'm
Yeah,
thinking more about information gathering and not a formal hearing and presentation.
well, that's right. And it's a chance to for a lot more interaction and exchange.
Yeah.
So I think as we begin to evolve our thinking, it would be good to go to the public and ask the public what they think of our thinking before we solidify anything or build an apparatus that we later figure out doesn't work. Many of these small organizations, for example, the application process is going to have to be very simple. Very few organizations are capable of generating a formal grant writing exercise.
Oh, yeah, I know. It's going to be
So
very
we're going to have to keep this pretty simple.
Yeah.
That's
Yeah, it's
just an
gonna be a one-
example. Yeah,
Yeah, it's a one pager.
yeah.
I think if you think of the ones that we used in Madison, the Concert on the Green, it's simple. You know, X funds needed as a result of COVID, could not raise funding. Current programs for the 2022 calendar are non-existent until we get some funding. That's good enough. And maybe there's some additional information on, you know, past budgets, so you get a sense of if the grant's in line with what they usually spend and stuff like that. But maybe that's just the first. Tell us enough so that we know whether we should ask more questions.
Right.
Yeah, and one of those perhaps further questions, I'm going to look at Kristen. And Kristen, to what extent are we going to have to justify to Uncle Sam or anybody else how this money has been spent?
You know, it's interesting, Al, because it's a discussion that Peggy, we're all kind of talking about. There's there's an opportunity, we think, to claim revenue loss as our reason to support why we're receiving the $5 million. And we think that gives us a little more flexibility with how and where we spend the funding, in the sense of reporting to the federal government. We have our process here. We would do this, of course. We're guessing there will be some reporting. I would think they would want to know what we did with it, but we certainly have the opportunity to have a little bit more flexibility. But if we choose not to do that, and I think Lauren just opened up.
Yeah, I just wanted to show them what Kristen.
That they give these eligible categories.
So we had
and this
to
would be if we
yeah.
have to be very specific in what we have to say, we think it falls under this category. And
This is
Lauren can
why,
walk you through this part. Yeah.
Yeah, so it's like we had to say initially when the ARP funding first came out, they said you're going to have to take every single expense and you're going to have to justify why it's eligible for COVID relief funds. What category code does it fall under? What is your anticipated outcome by funding this project? And then as we actually funded the project, we were going to have to do like statistical analysis of how we achieved our anticipated outcome to justify being reimbursed the money. So it was potentially incredibly cumbersome.
Yeah.
And now the guidance has come out and said, we understand basically that we were asking you guys to do the unattainable. So now it's a lot less strict than that. But
Right.
I do think like Kristen was saying, they're still going to expect us to itemize every penny.
Yeah.
Like every penny, what project it was spent on and who we paid it to.
So Lauren, this is very helpful. Does that mean that our application form should include some check boxes regarding what category someone is applying under in relation to the federal language?
I think if we did that internally, because there's only like 5 subcategories of ARP funding, if we just asked them to submit under which checkbox for which of those 5 categories versus they're under each category, there were 11 to like 15 different codes under, but now if we just have those 5 categories, if I could just ask a point of clarification when we're talking about this application process and going forward, are you thinking you're going to want this application process just for outside funding or for these requests from departments? Or are we saying we're not going to focus on the departmental requests?
The most general answer I can give to that is we better make sure that all the money we spend fits into one of these categories. Whether it's for a town government or whether it's for an outside group. So Lauren, I guess you and Kristen and others are going to have to keep us straight here to make sure that we're satisfying whatever the minimum definitional requirements are.
And that may
And
be
Lauren-
where, on their application, to put the boxes and let the applicants tell us where they think it fits. Subject, of course, to our, final
Final
approval.
review.
Right.
So
And
I
Lauren
think,
has kind of done that already, like with
Yeah.
what the projects that have been recommended via Peggy. I think Lauren has in her sheet here to the left has used the federal framework and placed them where we think the way we are interpreting it, where we think they would all fall under. So I think we're there, but I agree with giving everyone their own chance to say, because they might be looking at it differently and that could be interesting to us. I don't know,
yeah,
but we certainly have to give them that guideline of it's one of these 5 categories. And if it falls in there, I think, and Lauren is the wordsmith, I'm sure most of them could be supported by a category that's offered.
yeah. And if we're thinking of a one pager, I mean, internally, we've talked a lot. Kristen has this great form that she makes all the department heads fill out for CIP. So instead of reinventing the wheel, we could share that with you guys and just kind of tailor fit it to these
Right.
requests. Because it's a similar type of process that you're undertaking here. And we do already have them. And we can take that form then and say to these departmental requests too, you know, fill out this form
I
and give
agree.
us this extra information, right? Like Kristen, I think that's probably
I agree.
where we
Yep.
should head.
Yep.
That sounds good, actually. It's a good
Okay.
start.
Yeah,
That gives us a jump start on it.
Yeah, I think the one pager will help us to sort of maybe cull through the requests and sort of give us some broad things. And then maybe at the second phase, we could really, if we have to drill down a little bit deeper into categories, you know,
Yeah.
but I think up front they should probably tell us what category they think it applies to.
Yeah, I can imagine that you get a request that seems reasonable, then you can just say, come on in, we want to talk and get more details.
Exactly.
And then getting more specific so we know what kind of the impact is. Part of this, I guess, as well will be, I don't know if you have to report on it, but initially they wanted to understand the impact. So you may need to at least estimate, if I get this $10,000, it's going to impact 5,000 people in Madison, this benefit. And then maybe you just put a hook in there and say, hey, when it's all spent, you got to give us a report back on what you think happened. So how many people Concert Green is supposed to touch? How many people actually showed up?
Bob, I like that a lot. Was that part of, Lauren, was that part of the first?
yes,
that went
that
out?
was, yes, that was part of the first framework of the ARP funding guidelines.
And then also, did they have to demonstrate how COVID impacted them?
Yes, but I don't think it was clear as to how we were supposed to quantify their, you know. So we had talked at the beginning, like making them all sign like almost like an affidavit that
Mhm.
they are, you know, basically under penalty of perjury saying that they agree to this. So the loosened ARP guidelines are, I think, helpful to everyone involved because it gives us a little more leeway to fund things without having to worry that they're going to get rejected due to some type of paperwork or coding
Yeah.
Right,
concern.
right. So if we take the form that you used and enhance it, some of the things that Bob's just talked about, Peggy put in her, that might be the next step for us.
Yeah.
Somebody asked
Lauren,
the question, do we want to rule out town projects? And, you know, because we did so heavily on the town already, but I don't know. I'm looking at some of these requested funding, some of them, it's hard to say that. I think that's going to be another conversation.
I think
A
I'm
couple
asking
of
Lauren.
Small
and-
amounts. Last night at the Board of Finance, they did approve to add to the budget that right where Lauren is right now, that health position of $25,000 that we kind of have earmarked over there.
Yeah,
That they did agree to put it in the budget. So that
That's
is
cool.
$24,000 more that you have. And
Yeah,
also, I believe there's a youth and family position for $8,000,
Mhm.
Lauren, somewhere. And they
Yeah.
also did add that into the budget. So that can come out. You get another $8,000 to spend there.
I'm glad they did
And-
that because I was wondering how they were going to keep the people employed when the funds ran out.
Yeah.
Kind of a short stint.
we are, Bob, you will find with municipal government, we always find a way to add them to staff. Trust me,
Again, I know how it works.
across the board, it's just,
It's no different in public companies. Just figure it out.
Well,
I'd
you
like
make
to
it-
ask Lauren and Kristen, as far as you know, are the reporting requirements for Uncle Sam finalized? Or is this still evolving and could we get trapped later?
I think they're
Yeah.
mostly done. I
Yeah.
I do foresee that they could change, but I don't foresee them going back to being more
I agree.
strict. Now that they've allowed the money
Yeah.
to be spent for a certain way and they've loosened things, I don't think that they can go back because there would just be public outcry at this point
I
from
agree.
different
And-
towns. So
Yeah.
And didn't that document say it was the final rule?
I think it did.
Yeah.
yeah,
There wasn't, I had read a couple of months ago, I had read one that was an interim one, but the one that was forwarded to us just recently, that did say final rule.
Looking for that
So do you guys want me then, these ones that we've highlighted, I can take them out and then show you what the new balance would be down here?
sheet. Sure.
Sure.
Do you want to see them with them removed? So that brings your requests that were, what was it, like 2.6 million before?
Yeah.
Now they're down to 860,000.
All right, so that's the current request.
I'm sorry, Lauren, say that again. How much?
So this number right here, this 860, this
Yep.
was 2.6 million.
Right. It's now,
So you still have 2 million left to spend, but instead of having 2.6 million in requests, you
Right,
only have 800. So now you have 1.2 million. You know, if you were to fund all of
Mhm.
these requests here, you now instead of, you know, you have a little bit more wiggle room.
okay.
That's more.
okay. So I guess we still have that open question whether we include or exclude town projects. I don't know, I almost feel like that's,
I'd be in favor of leaving them there for now. And
Yeah.
just, but I think we want to really get more input from the public.
That's good.
yeah,
Maybe it's too soon to, yeah.
yeah.
Yeah, I'm
maybe-
good with that too. We have the requests from town government, but now let's get requests from other groups as well.
Yeah. And see where we fall.
Exactly.
So to me, Bob, our task is to figure out the process of how do we ask the public and other non-government agencies to come forward with their requests, and how do we evaluate them and all of that. And I guess the information Sherry's going to bring next week is certainly going to help us get started. We aren't under any time pressure other than the fact that some of these non-government agencies, I imagine, need help right away.
Yeah,
Yeah, I know that the cultural arts is looking for money, and I was sort of surprised at the amount of money that they asked for.
yeah,
Yeah.
But I like to, and we might find a way to put them sort of to the top of the heap here, but I think we need to get some, certainly I'd like to see some justification for that amount of money.
good. Do you think it's a good idea if we went down this list and looked at the big numbers and asked for them to come to one of the meetings or provide some additional information on that? I mean, that cultural arts one's a big one. And then
Yep.
there's a couple, the
I think
documents.
I
came in.
have some documents from them too, so I will send them so that you guys can
That'd be
review them
great.
right away next week.
Yeah.
And then this other one from the Shoreland Soup Kitchens, we had a typo with the initial email that got sent to us. So the actual ask from them was $10,000 from each town that was involved. And the email we got said $1,000. So we funded the 1,000, but now there's
Wow.
a balance of 9 and they still need it. So this is another one that Peggy and I had talked about making kind of more of a priority for you guys to consider, just so that we can kind of pay off the balance and we're not the only town that didn't give our full
Right.
10K.
So we basically committed to it. We just,
Yeah, we
You
just haven't
shred it.
actually officially approved it anywhere, but we are kind of on the hook for it.
and what is
Okay.
their time frame?
I believe it's already purchased and that they're making like monthly payments. So I think it's
All right, so how
ASAP.
do we,
Well, only because of our setup, I wonder if there should be a special appropriation from the town so that we don't muddy the waters here with moving money this early and we haven't even. let
yeah,
the
I'm
pub-
trying to find a way to get the approval process in place quickly for that to us. I mean, if they can survive until we get the process in place, we can just
Right,
run it through. or
me
just
just-
have
let
the
me just-
town.
Bob, when you see the Madison Culture Arts, the 120,000, one of the questions we could put on the form, because, COVID's been, we're not in emergency mode right now, but
Right.
was really to ask some of these organizations, not the town, obviously, some of these organizations, are they able to raise any of the, any matching funds? So that
I
we
like
really
that, yeah.
money, we could really expand our money. I mean, the cultural arts group is gonna, they can do their mailer this time of year for July 4th for their event. I think people are excited that they're gonna do it again, and they do have an opportunity to raise money. So maybe we could sort of work with a matching type of thing or something like that. But I think a lot of these organizations maybe have an opportunity to raise some of the money. It'd be a way to encourage them that we'd work with them.
Yeah, maybe, maybe it's we can give
Or the
you,
1.9 million then.
yeah, that'd be a great way to help them use that almost as a marketing campaign to drive some additional funding from their
Right.
user base. It's a good idea. Okay. So do we still need to do the public information gathering as opposed to a public hearing? Does that require the same amount of notification time?
No. A
No.
public information session is the same as calling a meeting. It's 24 hours in advance on the website.
Got it. Okay. All right. And then I guess the public hearing then would be more in line with, we have a proposal and we're soliciting input.
Mhm.
Okay.
And I just want to check your charge and make sure that your charge doesn't require a public hearing first, like an official public hearing.
I understand. To kick things off.
Make
No,
sure
just
at
says
least one
prior
public
to-
hearing.
Prior to the completion of your plans. You guys have plenty of time. We could do info sessions for the time being.
Okay. So is everyone comfortable then with us having the next meeting? We can just gather some more information on the Madison Cultural Arts. We get the form that's used for CIP. Sherry does a presentation on East Windsor and maybe anything that's going on within Guilford and the utilization of their funds. And go from there. And then also then start figuring out how we start pulling together the information from the public. Is there anything else we missed?
Sounds like an ambitious agenda.
I think that
The
sounds
week.
good.
All right.
Sorry, I'm on a Zoom.
Okay. Let's try that then. If you all have any thoughts on that spreadsheet I put up there, just start typing them in. We're all editors, so.
Did I miss it? But was there a form given out to the first round of projects here? Was there a form given to them? The ones that got funds with the first round?
No,
No? Okay, that's what I thought. So was the CIP form talking about?
Yeah.
yeah.
Okay. All right, I had that confused.
And Lauren, I'm not assigning this. I'm just asking you, did you say you were going to take a stab at that form and modifying it or not?
Yeah, Kristen has it. Like I said, Kristen created it for CIP. So she and
Okay.
I can behind the scenes doctor it up for what we think is
Cool.
good for you guys.
Yep.
Right.
Thanks,
Thank you.
Kristen.
That's terrific.
Cool.
All right. There are no members of the public to give public comment. So if there's nothing else, Bob, you can close or we can talk about.
Is there an
something else.
official way to close the meeting?
We just ask everyone if they don't, if there's no opposition to adjourning.
Okay, if there's no opposition to adjourning, we will adjourn.
Good night, everybody.
Excellent.
Thank you
Enjoy
all.
St. Patrick's Day. Have a nice beer. Bye.